But you just listen to the old Pork Chop Express. Dark and stormy night when an 8-foot tall maniac grabs your neck, taps your favorite head against the back of a barroom wall, looks you crooked in the eye and says, "Have you paid your dues, Jack?" Well, you just look that tall sucker right back in the eye and say, "Yes, sir, the check is in the mail." Greetings, everyone, and this is the Ambassador coming at you with a brand new work video. And today we are going to be discussing a great cult classic of the 1980s, John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China. And yes, I am on a bit of a Kurt Russell kick, but what can you say? The man can act, and he has had a great career. At least I think he has. And today, what we're going to talk about is what has become truly a cult classic of the 1980s and has had long legs. Not quite as long as Chemtrails, but still pretty darn long. And this movie is very hard to categorize what exactly it is. Now, most people call it just a simple action-adventure story, and you could theoretically make that argument, but what John Carpenter did with Big Trouble in Little China is he took a number of different genres and a number of different ideas and kind of threw them into a big old pot, turned the heat up on that sucker, and created a wonderful, marvelous meal for us that is Big Trouble in Little China. And I just want to, the things I want to say about this movie, there are so much. Because, again, this is not a movie I got to see in theaters because I was too young at the time. But it is a movie that I caught on TV, on cable, and I was like, I love this movie. From the very first moment, it just grabs you and says, come with me into this world. You have the opening scene with Egg Shen, played by Victor Wong. And he's sitting there with the attorney, and the attorney's questioning about all these different wacky events that we don't even know what has happened yet. And you have that very quirky, you have that exchange where the lawyer says, "Do you really believe in magic?" And Egg Shen says, "Oh, you mean Chinese black magic?" "Absolutely." And the lawyer's like, "Well, how can I know this?" And Egg's like, "How?" And then he holds up his hands, and you see lightning shooting between his hands, a la Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. And you're like, holy crap, this is going to be different. Because just the title itself is so oddball. Big Trouble in Little China. Now, most major cities throughout the United States have what they call Little Chinas, established by Chinese immigrants. But this movie, like I said, it just grabs you by the shirt collar and says, "Come with me, come on this adventure. You'll like this." And you have the introduction of Egg Shen at the beginning, and then you have the introduction of our hero, Jack Burton, played, I say, remarkably well by Mr. Kurt Russell. And this is a ride that you go on, and you want to go on it over and over and over again. Because Big Trouble in Little China is an action movie, it is a comedy, it is a kung fu movie. It has some Chinese mysticism and mythology in it. It's got very odd-looking creatures. It has supernatural beings in the form of the three storms of Thunder, the guy who blows up real big. Lightning, who, let's just face it, he's like a supercharged version of Emperor Palpatine. And then you've got Rain, who's very smooth and very swift and can't be touched all that easily. And you've got the main villain, David Lopan, played by James Hong. And at one moment he can intimidate you because you've got this guy who's in this long Chinese gown and this big tall hat, and he's got this long black hair and this very cool looking Fu Manchu beard, and he's got this pin going right through. It looks like it's going right through his head, but that's actually a very big hat pin, because hats that big, you have to have something to keep it stable. And you've got these two old friends, Jack Burton and Dennis Dunn's character, Wang Chi. Yeah. Hey, Wang Chi, looking for us? They know your name. This isn't good. Run! Sorry, I might be doing spontaneous quotes throughout this video, folks. Just a heads up. Because that's the other wonderful thing about this movie. It is so freaking quotable. So quotable. Especially Jack Burton's lines. But you have these two old friends. You've got Jack Burton, who's a truck driver. He's a long hauler. And he's coming into, I think it's San Francisco. And he's dropping off a load, and he goes into this freight yard / market / gambler's den, and he's sitting there with his good friend. I just said the name, Wang Chi, and they're playing something called Fan-Tan, which I don't know exactly the game itself, but I'm gonna have to look it up. I'm gonna have to do a little research on what Fan-Tan is, but they're sitting there having this back and forth. Jack has just won all this money, and they have this very oddball bet where Wang Chi and everything says, "I bet you I can chop that bottle in half with this knife." And it's all or nothing, all in, or it's actually double or nothing. And he doesn't slice the bottle, and then he's like, I gotta go to. Jack's like, "Where's my money?" He's like, "I ain't got that type of money on me." He's like, "Okay, fine, I'll just follow you back to your restaurant," because Wang Chi actually owns what they call a Cantonese restaurant, a Chinese restaurant. And Jack's like, "Well, where you gotta go?" He's like, "To the airport," and he's like, "Oh, we're my dead body." And Wang Chi's like, "If need be," because he's going there to meet his fiance. And you have this little side story and everything where he tells Jack that when he came to America, he had next to no money to his name. He worked till his fingers bled to build a life for this woman that he loves very immensely, that he wants to marry. And she shows Jack a picture, and he's like, "Whoa, this is a babe." You almost get the idea. Jack's thinking, "You're marrying this woman? You're ugly as hell." But of course, that's not what is said. But they end up getting to the airport, and there's this other gang called the Lords of Death that work for the main bad guy, David, for Lopan. And this movie is, well, as one of the actresses, her name is Margot Ritzenberger. She's a journalist, and she actually summarizes this movie very well. It's like some far out, wild-eyed, radical Alice in Wonderland story. And in a manner of speaking, it kind of is, because you have Jack and Wang Chi go down this alley looking for the Lords of Death, who have just kidnapped Wang Chi's fiance, Miao Yin. And they drive right into the middle of what Dennis Dunn's character, Wang Chi, calls a Chinese standoff. And Jack is like, "A what?" And Wang Chi's like, "Don't make a sound. Don't move. Don't do nothing." Because you got these two rival Chinese gangs in this alleyway. And they get into this big knockdown, drag-out fight, and it's just like rock'em sock'em robots from one moment to the next. And then you have these three guys in these long billowy capes and these big bamboo hats, and these are the three storms I was just mentioning. And they've got these weird exotic weapons, and you see them lining up one behind another, behind the other. and they're going off. They're going up against the good rival gang, relatively speaking. Um, Chang Sings. The Chang Sings are the good gang, and the Wing Kong, who actually also work for Lo Pan, are the bad gang. And Mayor speaking. But this movie, it just is a wild, wild ride, and through all these different events, they're trying to track down Wang Chi's fiance. She gets taken to a brothel. It's just, we're all adults here. It is what it is. It's a brothel. And Jack goes undercover. He's dressed in this very, very ugly, very, very ghastly suit. It's like a plaid nightmare or what have you. And he's got these black framed glasses. And he's acting like a bungler. He's acting like a nerd, a worse nerd than me. Let's be honest here. And he's trying to get his hands on Wang Chi's fiance so they can get her out of there. But I know I'm kind of synopsizing the movie here, and I want to get into some actual discussion of the movie. Basically, the long and short of it is, they eventually, Jack and Wang Chi and Egg Shen and some of the Chang Sings infiltrate Lo Pan's compound before this marriage ceremony that's going to make Lo Pan immortal, essentially, make him human, so that he can rule the galaxy from beyond the grave, as he says so eloquently. And they get into this huge martial arts fight, and you've got people flying all over the place. You've got people flying on wires. You've got Jack knocked out for the biggest part of the fight, because he shoots his gun into the air, knocks some concrete on his head, and just knocks his butt out. And everybody else is in this fight, and you have this sorcerer's battle between Egg Shen and Lo Pan. And eventually, Lo Pan gets a leg up on Egg Shen and defeats him. But the fight keeps going on. Wang Chi and Rain, one of the three storms, get into the sword fight, and eventually Wang Chi kills him. And then you have the big showdown, and it's semi-anticlimactic, because you're expecting some big knockdown drag out between Jack and Wang Chi and Lo Pan, but it really isn't. What ends up happening is that Jack and Gracie Law, Kim Cattrall's character, and she was there at the airport at the beginning of the movie as well, and Jack is like, "Whoa, what a fox!" And he goes over to her in the airport, and he's like, "Would you ever consider jumping in bed with a guy like me?" And she's like, "No, not if you're staying downwind like I am." In other words, he stinks. But anyway, Jack and Gracie end up there with Lo Pan in his main hall or whatever, and Jack takes his knife, and she's like, "Have you got a gun?" And he's like, "I've got a knife." She's like, "Are you kidding? This guy's like 12 feet tall." And he's like, 7. He's like, "Don't worry, I have taken something. I can see things no one else can see, do things no one else can do." And he takes the knife and throws it at Lo Pan, and Lo Pan dodges it. He picks it up and looks at the knife. He's like, "This is a good knife." Just kind of paying respect just before he's going to kill Jack. Lo Pan throws the knife at Jack. Jack catches it in midair and whops it right back at him. It lands right in Lo Pan's forehead. Kills him dead. That's it. That's the end of David Lo Pan. Because what ends up happening is, during another part of the movie, Gracie and Jack and everything, Gracie and Margot and I think it's Eddie, Wang Chi's I think it's his brother or cousin or something, everything. They all infiltrate the same warehouse where Mao Yin, Wang Chi's fiance, is being held. And they come across a bunch of other women that have been captured by the Lords of Death or the Wing Kong or whatever. And Lo Pan realizes that he can sacrifice one woman and become immortal, marry the other woman, and live out, as he says, live out his earthly pleasures. And he's going to kill Gracie and stay and keep Mao Yin alive. And that's how Gracie ends up there. And Kim Cattrall plays this very feisty, very no nonsense. I think she's a lawyer. Yeah, because that's what Wang Chi calls her, and everything when they're there in the airport. She plays a lawyer, and she's very gritty, no nonsense, very energetic. And let's just be candid here, Kim Cattrall, she's not a bad looking actress. But anyhow, that all being said of the movie, I know I've kind of synopsized. I hope I've synopsized it fairly well. The things I want to talk about with this movie, if they had made this movie in the 90s, I think back when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was big, it might have really caught on and really been a big moneymaker for John Carpenter. I think it did reasonably well in the theaters when it came out in the 80s. But the amazing thing about this movie is it has had legs. It has grown a very big cult following, and that's true of a lot of John Carpenter's movies. It has grown a cult following after the fact. But this is the type of movie I don't think Hollywood has enough imagination left in it to write something this oddball and wacky and entertaining now. And yes, I'm going to throw a little shade here. I'm going to be honest. Because as a friend of mine, a fellow YouTuber, said, we were spoiled in the 80s and 90s, and well, even before that, in all the decades before the 80s and 90s, we were spoiled. And on great movies and great TV shows and all this other stuff. But my thoughts on Big Trouble in Little China, and I know I've kind of given some already, but just a few other things I wanted to say. I think, honestly, this movie gives you something that allows your brain to just kind of switch off and have a good time. And that is something that I think we all can use from time to time. Because so many talented people came together to make this movie. And for some of you who aren't terribly familiar with John Carpenter's work, this was his brain. This was, a matter of speaking, a brainchild of his, and he put his time, his effort, and his energy into this movie. Because the interesting thing about John Carpenter, and I think I might have mentioned this in one of the other movies of his I've reviewed, is that he does his own music. And he did the score for Big Trouble in Little China, and there's actually a music video that is that he did with a couple other guys, and the end credit song "Big Trouble in Little China" is set to that music video is set to that song. Because this is one of those movies I would actually sit and listen to and watch the end credits, just because the song at the end is so darn cool. I'll try and include a link to that music video and everything in the description. Because it's synth pop meets oriental music, for lack of a better term, and it is such a fun. This movie is just a fun ride, and I obviously review movies that I enjoy. And if you have not ever seen Big Trouble in Little China, I highly recommend. You can find it on Blu-ray. I actually have a Blu-ray copy of it, and it has all the making ofs, material, documentaries on it. It's got the music video, and it's got commentary with John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. I almost said Jack Russell. That's a dog, not an actor. At least I don't think there's an actor named Jack Russell, but that's beside the point. But this film has lasted for 20 some odd years or more now. And I think honestly, it is like a fine wine. It only gets better with age. And I highly recommend it. If you love John Carpenter's work, this is a must to have for your collection, especially if you are a John Carpenter fan, and I am. And it is definitely a must if you like kung fu movies, martial art movies, because there is some really good martial arts work in this film. They got good martial artists who can act to work on this movie, and everybody from the top to the bottom, they gave their all for this film, and that's why it is so endearing and such a wonderful piece of 80s pop culture. So, but that all being said, as always, folks, if you've got comments, please add them down below in the comments below. That was kind of redundant, wasn't it? But as always, if you like this video, smash that like button, share it with your friends, because I think this is a movie that should remain in the public consciousness. And as a lover of 80s pop culture, it is one that you really should experience at least once or twice. So, a couple other things I wanted to mention before I close this out. I will be live streaming a couple times this weekend. Once on Friday, we will be doing part 2 of our Dune discussion on the Ambassadorial Wing. And then I will be live streaming on another channel and everything. I'm trying, yeah. On a thing called Binge Buddies, or Stream Buddies. It's one of those two. And that will be on Saturday. That's why I'm moving Ambassador Wing to Friday night so that I can stream on Saturday. So keep an eye out and everything. I'll try and once that stream is done, I'll try and include the link and everything on my Twitter. If you want to contact me, you can do so on Twitter at Rogue5778. I do respond to DMs, so if you want to DM me and everything, or if you just want to tweet at me, that's fine too. Either way works. The other thing I wanted to, I've started doing this, and I honestly am enjoying it. There is a channel I want to give a shout out to, and it's simply called Teresa Martin. It's by a woman and everything that I'm a subscriber to. She's a small YouTuber like me, and she covers a number of different topics on her channel. She does a lot of historical videos. She'll discuss the Civil War, the American Revolutionary War, some of the events in those two conflicts. She'll do something that she's currently doing. She actually does something. She has a series called Bedtime Stories or Bedtime Reading, and currently she's going through a Pride and Prejudice, I believe it is. And I've actually had the opportunity to stream with Teresa in the past, and she is just a delight. And I will include a link to her channel as well and everything in the description down below. If y'all aren't familiar with her, give her check out some of her content, and definitely if you like what she does, consider subscribing. But that all being said, my friends, until next time, this is the Ambassador, signing off.